watching afternoon repeats and the food he eats in the country. He takes a manner of pills and piles up animal spells in the country. Oh, it's like an animal farm, that's a rural charm in the country. He's got money.
Blur were formed in London in 1988 and are best known for being a Britpop band and for their rivalry with Oasis. They are Damon Albarn, Graham Coxon, Alex James and David Rowntree. Their first stint of existence was from 1988 to 2004, which produced 7 albums. Their second stint was from 2008 to 2016, which produced 1 album. And their third is from 2022, and they may be still going. There seems to be some doubt about that. They have had 1 album thus far in this stint. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of The Great Escape, which is an album by Blur that was released in 1995 and was their 4th album. It might be my first time listening to this album. It's certainly not one that I have a copy of myself. I know I know bits of Blur, I would say. So I'm going to quite happily describe this as Britpop, but let's just pick into that a little bit more. It's pop rock, so it doesn't. If I was just to say pop, that doesn't give the full impression, because pop from somewhere, a bit earlier than here onwards, tends to imply very electronic stuff. Electropop was definitely a big thing in the 90s, so people like Madonna and Kylie Minogue, etc. But then there was this counter thing with Britpop and indie and all sorts of things like that, and this was definitely in that genre area. And part of this is because it sounds more like real instruments. Not that I want to delegitimize any of the more electronic stuff. So it's pop rock because it's kind of rock, but it's also very immediate, very accessible, and it's very sing along. So that is the element that for me always makes something more pop than not. I would say though that this is verging on art rock, which in my mind generally it's just got more to it, and it's got more interesting stuff going on musically and sometimes lyrically as well. So musically it is quite accessible, but there are unusual things going on here. So there's often some quite unusual chord sequences. There's some unusual and interesting sounds used. It's pretty varied. They use a lot of different sounds here. Their sound, to me, always feels like that there's been this continuum of the Kinks and then Madness and then Blur. And part of that is the kind of the accents but it's also the attitude. Doesn't have the ska elements that Madness had, but it has similar approach in some ways. There's also one of the things that seems quite Blur-like is kind of wibbly sounds or kind of strong vibrato on some of the instruments, almost kind of like detuned, but somehow it works. And there's quite a lot of vocal harmonies as well, and it got this kind of musical tongue-in-cheek feeling, as if they're kind of parodying themselves somewhat at times. So the previous album to this was Parklife, and I've got a copy of that, and I've played it a lot. I'm prepared to go out on a limb and say that I think that this album is stronger than Parklife. I know that might not mean anything to you if you don't know Parklife, so sorry about that. So Parklife has some quieter songs that, for me, just don't quite land. Some of them do. Whereas pretty much, I'd say, everything on this album lands. It works as a strong, independent song. Damon Albarn has got a particular kind of singing style, which very much brings out a Southern English accent. It's relatively unusual for when somebody's singing for a regional accent to come through in that singing. So that's also part of their identity here. So around this time, mid-90s, there was a whole big thing of Blur versus Oasis. two big Britpop bands, and there was a tribal allegiance thing that went on. So I will confess I'm firmly on the Blur side of that divide. So I wouldn't say that's not to disparage Oasis. They did some very good songs, but I found Blur, and so specifically this album, it works. That they're classier and the more tongue in cheek, and it's just intelligent in a way that Oasis stuff isn't for me. Sorry if you're a huge Oasis fan and you feel like I'm uh, casting shade on your favourite band. The songs here are basically character songs. They're about various characters. A lot of them are not hugely sympathetic towards the characters that they're talking about. There's a focus on loneliness and alienation, and apparently a lot of it is actually Damon Alban talking about his life and where he was at this point. There is one track, Dan Abnormal, which, because it's got the word Dan in it, or the name Dan, makes me think, oh, yes, okay. Only that's named because it's an anagram of Damon Albarn. So other notable songs on this album: Country House, which I knew, Charmless Man, which I knew, Entertain Me, which I hope is going to be the track that I play out on. It's got some excellent bass work on it. Really enjoyed that. Ernal Same has got a monologue by Ken Livingstone. Anybody who's in the UK will probably know who Ken Livingstone is. He was once mayor of London. He was leader of the London Council for a while. Blur chose him because of the boring nature of his voice. They thought he was a fan. It turned out they just liked his monotonous nature of his voice. There are loads of interesting songs on this album, and my overall feel, as you'll have got from this review, is that I loved it. I find it quite charming as an album. There's quite a lot to dig into here. So that's what I think. I'd love to know what you think of this album. So please really let me know by leaving your comments. And that's it from me for now.
The weekend is back, but so is he. Enter the floodlights, see the fraternity.